When I booked a hotel in Manila, I honestly didn't expect anything special. It was a four-star hotel, good reviews, clean photos, and a mid-range price just like any other business hotel in Korea. I thought, a hotel is a hotel. But from the moment I stepped inside, I realized I was completely wrong. The lobby wasn't fancy. No marble floors, no scent diffuser, no robotic efficiency. But it felt alive. Two receptionists were chatting and laughing with a guest, while another waved at me from across the counter. "Hello, sir. Welcome," she said, with a smile so natural it almost caught me off guard. In Korea, the first few seconds at check-in are usually silent. Just paperwork, payment, and a polite nod. Here, the first few seconds felt like a reunion. "Where are you from, sir?" "Korea? Oh, I love K-dramas." Everyone laughed. It wasn't formal service, it was human connection. When I handed over my passport, the staff didn't rush. They took their time, double-checked everything slowly, and kept talking to me. At first I was a bit impatient. My brain, trained by Korea's fast service culture, kept thinking, why is this taking so long? But something in her tone made me pause. She wasn't being slow because she didn't care. She was being slow because she did. She explained every step with kindness. "Breakfast starts 6:30 to 10, sir. But if you wake late, we still keep some for you. No problem." That one sentence, "no problem," said a lot about how things work here. In Korea, service is about precision. Here, it's about flexibility, understanding, and warmth. When she finally handed me my room key, she said, "Enjoy your stay, Mr. Danny. If you need anything, just call me. I'm Michelle." She even wrote her name on the card. That's something I've never experienced in a Korean hotel. In Korea, the goal is efficiency finish check-in as fast as possible. In the Philippines, the goal seems to be something else entirely. To make you feel welcome. As I walked toward the elevator, a bellboy smiled and offered to carry my bag, even though it was light. I said, "It's okay," but he insisted. "Sir, it's my pleasure. Not my job, my pleasure." That's the difference. The elevator doors closed, and I found myself smiling for no reason. Nothing spectacular had happened, just a check-in. But somehow it already felt like home. The check-in process started just like anywhere else: ID, booking confirmation, and payment. But 5 minutes in, I noticed something was different. Nobody was rushing. There was no mechanical rhythm, no corporate tone. The receptionist kept smiling, typing slowly, and chatting in between keystrokes. It wasn't multitasking, it was mindfulness. In Korea, check-in feels like a short transaction: efficiency first, emotion later. Everything is quick, structured, and polite. The staff don't usually make eye contact for long, they focus on accuracy. But here in the Philippines, the whole process had a heartbeat. The receptionist looked up often, asked me about my trip, even joked, "Traffic from the airport, right?" Manila, always traffic. We both laughed, and somehow the wait didn't feel like waiting. While she printed my key card, another staff member brought me a welcome drink: cold calamansi juice. No fancy tray, no rehearsed script. Just a glass, condensation dripping, handed with a smile. She said, "It's hot outside, sir. Drink first." That single line carried more hospitality than any five-star system I've ever seen. It took maybe 10 minutes to finish check-in. If this were in Korea, I'd probably have been annoyed by the pace. But here, I realized I didn't mind, because every second felt genuine. There was warmth, not procedure. There was conversation, not routine. Before handing over my key, the receptionist looked at me and said, "If you need anything, you just call me, okay? My name's Michelle." She even added, "I write here," and scribbled her name on the hotel card. It was small, almost informal, but it made me feel remembered, not processed. I've stayed in dozens of hotels: Seoul, Tokyo, Singapore, but never has anyone introduced themselves like that. It reminded me that service isn't always about speed, sometimes it's about presence. When I thanked her, she replied, "No problem, sir. Enjoy your stay, and don't forget breakfast. I'll make sure you get the good coffee tomorrow." She laughed, and I laughed too. That's when it hit me in Korea. Service feels professional here. It feels personal. As I walked toward the elevator, the bellboy asked softly, "You need help with luggage, sir?" I said, "No, it's okay." But he replied, "No problem. I walk with you." Not because he had to, but because he wanted to. That's the Filipino style. Not service for pay, but service from heart. By the time the elevator doors closed, I realized something simple but powerful. Korea perfected efficiency. The Philippines perfected warmth. And maybe, in hospitality, that's the more lasting impression. When I entered the room, the first thing I noticed was it wasn't luxurious. The walls had a few scratches, the furniture looked used, and the air conditioner made a soft humming sound. But strangely, I didn't mind, because there was something else that stood out immediately: care. On the bed, a towel was folded neatly into the shape of a heart, with a small flower on top. Next to it, a handwritten note. "Welcome, Sir Danny. We hope you have a relaxing stay." Housekeeping. It wasn't printed, it wasn't corporate, it was real handwriting, slightly uneven, but sincere. I smiled without realizing it. In Korea, hotel rooms are spotless, minimalistic, quiet, and efficient. But they often feel like no one actually touched them. Here, everything carried a trace of someone's presence. The smell of fresh coconut soap, the slightly wrinkled bed sheet that still felt clean, the open curtain letting sunlight in it, all felt human. I turned on the kettle, and within a few minutes, there was a knock. "Room service, sir. Complimentary coffee." It wasn't a fancy espresso set, just instant coffee with milk powder and sugar in a tray, delivered with a warm grin. The staff said, "We know Koreans like coffee in the morning." That one sentence, "We know Koreans like coffee," made me pause. They didn't just provide service, they paid attention. As I looked around, I realized this room wasn't perfect, but it was personal. Someone had thought about how to make a guest feel comfortable, not just impressed. In Korea, comfort often comes from perfection, perfect temperature, perfect lighting, perfect silence. Here, comfort came from warmth, imperfect, but full of heart. Later, I found a small basket near the table with local snacks, banana chips, dried mangoes, and a note that said, "Try these, sir. Our favorite Filipino snacks." No charge, no advertisement, just kindness. I sat on the bed with the coffee and thought, this is hospitality. Not luxury, not convenience, but empathy. It's about making someone feel like they belong, even if it's just for one night. When the sun began to set, the golden light came through the curtains, hitting that small handwritten note on the bed. It glowed softly, reminding me that sometimes the smallest gestures speak the loudest. The room wasn't flawless, but it felt alive, and maybe that's what true hospitality is supposed to feel like. That night, something went wrong. Nothing dramatic, but enough to notice. The shower pressure was weak, and the Wi-Fi kept disconnecting every few minutes. My first reaction, almost automatic, was the Korean one: call the front desk, get it fixed right away. So I did. "Hello? This is room 304. The Wi-Fi keeps dropping." There was a short pause, and the receptionist replied, "Oh, sorry, sir. We fix soon, okay?" Her voice was so kind that I couldn't even be annoyed. 5 minutes later, someone knocked. A maintenance guy came in smiling, holding a small toolkit. He checked the router, scratched his head, and said, "I reset. Maybe better now." It still wasn't perfect, but he smiled like he just saved the day. I couldn't help but laugh. In Korea, the same situation would have been handled like a small operation. Staff would move quickly, apologize multiple times, and make sure I got compensation points. Here, the problem didn't disappear immediately, but somehow the frustration did, because every person I talked to sounded genuinely sorry, not trained to sound sorry. A little later, another staff called. "Sir Danny, Wi-Fi okay now? If not, I can bring pocket Wi-Fi for you." That one line changed everything. They couldn't fix the system perfectly, but they tried to fix my experience. And it made me realize something: efficiency solves problems. Hospitality solves people. They didn't follow a rule book, they just cared. The same thing happened with the shower. When I mentioned the weak water pressure, the staff smiled apologetically. "Sorry, sir. Old building, but we give you free drink at bar, okay? It wasn't a perfect solution, but it was human. Instead of cold professionalism, I got warmth. Later that night, I sat at the bar with that free drink. The bartender greeted me. "Ah, sir, from 304. How's your room?" I told him about the shower, and he laughed. "Yes, that shower has attitude." We both laughed again. That moment, I understood the Filipino way of service isn't about removing discomfort instantly. It's about replacing it with connection. When I went back to my room, the Wi-Fi was still spotty. But it didn't matter anymore, because instead of irritation, I felt gratitude. Not everything worked perfectly, but everyone tried sincerely. And that sincerity, I realized, is what you remember long after checkout. The next morning, as I checked out, I realized this trip had taught me something I didn't expect. I came to experience a hotel, but what I really experienced was hospitality. At the front desk, Michelle smiled again. "Good morning, sir. Did you sleep well?" I told her yes, and she said, "Good. You look happy today." That simple line, no script, no formality, just observation and warmth. It's small, but it stays with you. When I handed her the key, she didn't rush through the checkout process. She asked how my stay was, remembered my Wi-Fi issue, and said, "Sorry again for that, sir. Next time, we give you better room, promise." Not a corporate apology, a personal one. And that's when I finally understood the difference between hospitality and efficiency. In Korea, the service industry is built on precision. Everything works fast, flawless, predictable. It's comfortable because it's reliable. But sometimes, that reliability feels distant, like there's a polite wall between people. In the Philippines, the system might not always work perfectly, but the people do. Their sincerity fills every gap the system leaves. They don't follow a manual, they follow their instinct to care. That's why you leave feeling something, not just remembering what you paid. Before I left, Michelle handed me a small bag. Inside was a pack of dried mangoes and a note that said, "Thank you for staying, Mr. Denny. Hope you come back soon. Michelle." I laughed softly. A handwritten note again, just like the one in the room. No marketing logo, no printed slogan, only warmth. Walking out of the lobby, I thought about the contrast between both cultures. Korea's efficiency gives you satisfaction. The Philippines' hospitality gives you emotion. Both are good, but one lasts longer. As the taxi pulled away, I looked back at the small hotel sign fading in the distance. Nothing about that place was perfect. Not the Wi-Fi, not the shower, not the furniture. But the experience? It was unforgettable. Because perfection fades, but kindness stays. That's what hospitality really means. It's not the service you deliver, it's the feeling you leave behind. And that morning in Manila, I felt it clearly. Korea taught me how to serve well. The Philippines taught me how to care well.